Do you have any? Maybe I can leave this in too as a bonus. Do you have any exercises that you can think of that would help two people get connected and present that are about to do an interview?
I mean, 5 things is one of like my classic. I love 5 things.
Yeah.
It's just like dumb and like whatever you say isn't bad, but you're just like present.
I love that.
And then last letter, first letter.
Is that?
Maybe
it's self-explanatory.
It's literally, I mean, it is, but it also isn't. So
Yeah.
It's like you take the last letter of what someone said and then make that the first letter of what you say. And so you just try to have this mildly awkward conversation, but it's like focused more on like listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that real quick.
Okay.
And I may throw this in at the end of the episode or something as like a little bonus clip.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start or you want me to start?
Think that you've already started.
Dang, that was fast.
True. Keep it fresh. Keep it light.
Totally. I say that every single time I sit down in front of a camera.
We always starting with T. I want a different letter.
Rationally, I know that's a reasonable request, and I am happy to accommodate.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear.
Really? You enjoy when people accommodate your requests?
Certainly. Doesn't everybody love to be accommodated?
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome. Okay.
It makes you think too, and you're like,
yes,
we have to kind of be in it together.
So Betsaida, I may steal that. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner real quick.
Yeah. From your phone?
From my phone.
You're in the future.
We are in the future, which just like the past is always happening in the present moment. I am going to steal that, and I'm going to use that for every interview I do, I think, from now on. That was so good. That's I feel fun. Here.
Yeah, you have to. Like, it's like, because there was that moment where I was like, oh no, like, listen, what was the last thing? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, that was so much fun. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the Jobcast with Cristian Amaral, where each week I sit down with the most interesting people I know and talk to them about their life and career. Now, despite the name, this show is not just about jobs, it's about people. And today I'm sitting down with one of my favorite people. She is not only an accomplished improviser and stand-up comedian with over 2 decades on stage, she's not only a leadership coach who works with business owners and managers to lead teams more effectively. She was also recognized as a TEDx speaker last year and gave an insightful talk, which you should watch, about how to connect with your inner child. Please help me welcome my guest today, Betsaida LeBron.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Happy to be here.
So you are honestly the perfect person to talk to, I think, for not only what I want this show to be, which is really connecting with folks who have kind of found their I won't even say passion, because I think people have so many passions, but their path in life. Mm-hmm. And also I don't want to put too much pressure on people to feel like I have to do my passion for work, but it's more about like, I want to help people find their path if they don't know what they want to do in life. So I think you're a great guest for that. And I promise I'll give you a second to talk in just a moment, but also because I'm early on in this podcast journey, and I'm finding that I'm still getting nervous when I sit down and talk to people. Can you just share a little bit about your journey, whether it's with starting a business or being on stage, on the TEDx stage? What has your journey been with nervousness and the emotions behind that and kind of dealing with it? I'll throw it up at the end of the episode, but just before we started rolling, we did an exercise that kind of got us more connected and present, which was so much fun. Where does that take you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think that one of the things that's really helpful for me, but also like with clients when I'm working with them, is to help them remember that nervousness and fear is a natural response. Our brain is trying to take care of us. Right. And so if you had no feelings, no fear, like that's kind of like you're a bit of a sociopath. Like the fact that you have some feelings about things is a good thing.
It's a green flag.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And so, but just recognizing, right, that that's our brain trying to protect us. It doesn't want us to go do something that seems scary, that might get us hurt, where people might, it just feels dangerous. And so anything that's new, anything that we haven't really done before, inherently just feels dangerous because we're not sure what the outcome's going to be. So that's a normal thing. And I think that for me, it's always like when that comes up, recognizing that it's normal and not beating myself up for it and being like, oh, you're supposed to be better than that. It's just to be, okay, that's what happens. But then also I was just talking about this earlier with some business friends. And we like kind of get together and we talk, and that's another thing, like have people that you talk to. Yeah. And I was just sharing about how, you would think that I'm like super positive, but sometimes like I'm not positive, but I like speak to myself with like a, I don't know, like a barker might. Like I and like sometimes that's okay. So like just kind of that nervous energy, just giving it some place to go. I kind of like, I'll just hype myself up. So it's like the opposite of nervousness. So one, knowing that it's like, okay, I'm allowed to be nervous, but then two, like I can do the thing even though it makes me nervous, even though I'm a little bit scared. Yeah. But that doesn't have to hold me back. It's like, okay, like watch me. And that's kind of how I talk to myself sometimes.
I love that.
One of the things too is like the more you practice and the more you play, the easier it gets. And so if you do something with a sense of play about it, you can't be nervous about it. Play is the opposite of fear.
What does play mean to you?
Play is it's a mindset. So it's the mindset that I am curious and I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to be open to what it really is, not what I need it to be. Ooh, and it is just like exploration and openness and it's leaning into the things that light you up. That's play.
I think that's so important. And it's interesting because I find that the situations where I'm the least nervous is when I'm in a situation that's totally brand new. I'm just realizing this right now, but if I'm like totally out of my domain, or I'm exploring a place I've never been, or meeting somebody I've never met before, I'm there and there's not a lot of nerves. For some reason, the nervousness comes like this. I've sat down across from my friends and talked to them a million times. And yet something about that camera being on spikes the nervousness. I imagine even like if you were doing your TEDx talk, how many times have you been on a stage?
Right.
Thousands, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but was that a little bit different being on that particular stage versus the thousands of stages you had been on before? What is that?
It's because we care.
Yeah.
Right. Which is good. And again, it's not a bad thing.
Totally.
But I know for me, like the TEDx, it was definitely like, I mean, even like when I would rehearse it, imagining doing it live, I would still get the same level of nerves.
Sure.
And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this enough time so it's in my body so that I don't have to worry about it. Is it
100%?
Like, then it's just in my body and I'm just kind of just being able to get through it. And then I just think it's because we have an expectation. And so all of a sudden when you have an expectation, and especially when it's something outside of your control,
yes,
right, which is how other people react to what you're doing. I cannot control how other people react to my message, to how I, whatever it is that I'm doing.
Totally.
That creates a higher level of stress and anxiety in what I'm doing because I can only control what I can control. And so, some of that is just kind of like practice and knowing what to let go of.
I love that. There's a comedian / speaker named Kyle Cease that I used to follow, and he wrote a book called I Hope I Screw This Up. And I was thinking about that before we sat down today because I'm like, man, this is only episode 4, but I was like, when am I going to get to the point where I'm not nervous to sit down with people I know and just chat? And then I had that thought of, I hope I screw this up. And I thought, how funny would that be if I did 100 episodes and I was still nervous, but and then instead of being scary, it was like, I found it hilarious. I was like, oh, that would be so funny if I kept doing these and I think it's just that mindset shift to play. I hadn't made that connection, but I think that's so true, is approaching it. I think expectations is seriously important and is a real place where people get tripped up is the only stress that you're going to have in any situation is going to come from expectations and wanting something to be different than it is, or wanting it to be a way that you can't control ultimately.
Well, and I also think like generally we're way too precious with our things, and like
that's so true.
And we're talking about like the work world and jobs and stuff, and I just think
Yeah,
that sometimes the idea of being, and I talk a little bit about this in my TED Talk, of like being an adult is like, oh, I have to take myself so serious. I have to like step into this thing, and we're almost like too precious with things. It feels like, oh, I can't play. I have to like, oh, it has to be a certain way, and that's stressful.
What do you see when you go into these environments and you're helping, especially coach leaders who have to lead these teams? What do you see as the most consistent? You mentioned armor in your TED Talk and how we put on these pieces of armor as we grow. What do you see as the most consistent pieces of armor that you have to help people remove?
I think this false positivity is a thing that I see a lot of leaders think that they have to bring.
Interesting. So even if they're feeling maybe a more negative emotion, or they're upset or angry, they feel like they can't be honest about that.
They can't be honest about how they're feeling. They can't be honest about kind of how they feel about what's happening maybe organizationally in the company. Like there's kind of like, oh, I have to, kind of say the thing that I'm supposed to say. I have to behave the way I'm supposed to. And that is a recipe for eroding trust.
The best manager I ever had a phrase. He was the kind of guy where you always knew he was being honest. Whether it was good or bad, he was going to tell you exactly what he thought, and then you were going to deal with it. And his phrase was truth before harmony. And what that meant was, if we're ever going to be able to work together as a team, if we're ever going to be able to accomplish a goal, we got to be honest with each other first. And if you're pissed off at your coworker, or you're not happy with the way I'm doing things, or I'm upset with you because you did this thing, like, nothing is going to get solved, and no one's going to be feeling good or on the same page until we're honest with each other first. And after we get it all out, and after we say what's on our mind, then we can move forward. And then the air is clear, and we know that we love each other at the end of the day. Like, I think that's so important. And I wish more leaders understood that.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, that requires a level of like emotional intelligence to do in a way that is really healthy. Because I do see sometimes leaders go, well, then I'm going to tell you the truth, and I don't care if it hurts. And it's like, that's no, let us not go in that direction, because like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the opposite end of the spectrum.
Right. Yeah. So, but somebody who knows exactly that like truth is important, but having that awareness and balance. Yeah.
What does emotional intelligence mean to you, and why has that been the focus of your work?
It really means just understanding how to work with your emotions versus against them, or trying to hide them, or trying to change them.
Wow. That's so interesting, because whenever I used to hear the phrase emotionally intelligent, I always thought that referred to how I interact with others and, being maybe more in tune with how people are feeling. But you're saying, no, it's about being emotionally intelligent, knowing what your emotions are telling you and trying to communicate.
And the same for other people.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, what I see people make a lot of mistakes is trying to change other people's emotions, right? So whether it's like a friend or a partner, and they're coming in and they feel a certain way, and you're like, I don't like that you feel this way. Like, I want you to change.
Yeah.
And then, like, no matter what you do, the way that you're trying to change them, no matter what you throw at them, it's not going to help. It's probably going to hurt the relationship.
And you might even think you're helping, right? You might even think you're going to be like, come on, girl, we're going to drink. And, you're not going to be sad tonight. You're going to be happy. When maybe what that person needs is for you to go, wow, that sounds really tough. Or just to like hear them.
Right. But like to work with them wherever they're at. And the thing about emotions, and I like to think about them, I don't know if this is a fair analogy or not, because I don't have children, but I think of emotions are kind of like toddlers, right? Like they will just keep yelling the thing at you till you listen, right? Like you can't just ignore it and be like, oh, it's fine, I'll deal with it. It's like, no, like you have to hear what it is that they need. And in the same way, like toddlers, like I don't understand every single toddler, right?
Yeah.
But I know like the ones I'm close to, like I know my nieces and nephews. I understand what they're saying because I spent time with them. And a lot of us don't spend enough time understanding or listening to our emotions to
Yeah.
understand what they're trying to tell us. And so a big part of emotional intelligence is like just that awareness, knowing yourself, knowing your emotions, and also not to feel bad that like, no, I think emotions get a bad rap. Like there's certain emotions like everybody loves love, everybody loves joy, but like, ooh, anger and like jealousy and sadness, like those are,
We don't want to feel those.
we don't want to feel those. So those are bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, there are no good or bad emotions. They're all valid. And every single one of them has a message for us. So
I totally resonate with what you're saying about understanding the emotion and where it's coming from, because I can't tell you how many times I have felt, maybe I feel upset or annoyed, and then when I dig deep, I go, oh, I just need some alone time, or like, I just
Right.
haven't gotten a chance to recharge. I'm not actually upset about this thing. I just haven't gotten a chance to be in my zone. And then I go and I do my own thing and I come back to the situation and that thing doesn't bother me at all, because that's not what actually was bothering me. I think that's huge for people.
And then take it back to what we were talking about earlier is like showing up to something and being nervous about it. Again, that's not a bad thing. We don't have to get rid of the nervousness,
Yeah.
but just like, oh yeah, it's natural that I'm nervous, and figure out why. Oh, I'm nervous because I care. I'm nervous
Yes.
because this matters to me. And I have like a desire
Yeah.
for people to like receive this well. Great. That can inform so much of like, then how I do this.
Absolutely. I'm going to steal a question from one of my favorite do you ever listen to Diary of a CEO?
No, should I?
You should.
Okay.
It's a guy named Stephen Bartlett. He's on the UK version of Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. He's a business owner, and he talks to entertainers and CEOs, and he asks one of my favorite questions. And so I'm going to steal it and I ask it to you. What do I need to know about your earliest years to better understand who you are today and the work that you do?
Oh, I love that question.
Isn't it the best question?
It's such a good question.
That's why I had to preface it. I couldn't just throw that out like it was mine.
Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. No, that's such a good question. The first thought, I'm just going to go with it. My family really, it was really mostly me and my sister, but then we roped in my two younger siblings, my brother and sister, did this puppet show that we would do at church. We grew up at church.
Yeah.
And we did different kinds of puppet shows. And so we would travel and like set up this like a show, and it was just a lot of fun. And so we would like write the scripts. And
You would go on tour.
Yes. No, my like, and so it became a whole family affair because we at first had just these small little puppets. And we would do a show once a month. It was because monthly was like the kids show, but like it was a hit. Like there was always, even the adults were like, when's a puppet show? Like, we're ready for the puppet show.
That's incredible. I love that.
And so, yeah, that was very, very, very fun for no reason. Like anytime there was a villain, I would always imitate my dad's voice, which delighted so many people in the church.
That's so funny.
Which, I was a kid.
And he was like, why did that voice sound familiar?
He honestly loved it. He wasn't even mad about it because he
That's so
just was
funny.
like, the coolest characters were the villains anyway.
Of course. Absolutely. Just look at Disney movies.
He didn't even mind. So my dad was like, okay, we need a bigger stage. So he went and like, we bought all this PVC pipe and like built this like this huge traveling stage that we would pack up. And then my mom started calling like churches in the area, like booking us. And we did a circuit, and we like would travel and like perform.
And would it be improvised to any extent, or would it be kind of the same story that you were performing each time?
It would be both. So my sister hates, and she'll tell the story differently than me because she hates how much I would improvise. And she always wanted it to be scripted. And I was like, no, we got to keep it fresh. It's more fun. She's like, this should not be like this. And I was like, look, the stories, because we always had like, a Bible story or parable, right? So like, we know like that's always going to be the same.
You got to sell it.
We're not changing the Bible, but there was always like, a real life situation
Yeah.
that would lead these kids into thinking about, well, have you ever heard this story? And then it would flash back to the Bible story. And I was like, that's always going to be like the same. And I was like, but the front and the end, like we can improvise. And
Yeah.
she would get so stressed.
Oh, that's so funny. I identify with your sister real hard in that story. That's so funny. I would be the same way.
There was one time where she was playing the teacher. It was a kid. I was playing the kid as a puppet that was just being a problem in class, and she was playing the teacher. No, it was flipped. She was the problem kid. I was the teacher. So she had to name my character. So she said, "I'm sorry, Mrs." And then she just stared at me with a blank look. And we're like behind
that's so
the
funny.
thing, right? Everyone's watching us. And I'm looking at her like, just say anything. And then she said, "Mrs. Killer." And I just look at her like, why is that the name that came to your mouth? And then she goes, "Son, Mrs. Killerson." And I was like, that's not a name.
Oh, that's so funny.
She was so mad.
Because she's
so
like,
mad.
"This is your fault for making
Yes.
me improvise."
Yes. And she's like, "You did this to me." She's like, and
That's
everyone
so
laughed
funny.
so hard that like, why is the teacher named Killerson? And she still was like, "You are the worst."
That is so funny. So so I take it you've met a lot of people like your sister in the coachings that you do?
Oh, yeah.
That's
And
so
I'm
great.
okay with being the villain. And maybe that's part of like why.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cause I'm like, that's fine.
absolutely.
You need somebody to be mad at and like focus that rage at me.
Yeah.
Perfect. But look at what you just did.
Do you experience in the coachings that you do you experience resistance to any of the methods or the exercises that you try to introduce?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people are like, why? Like, you're asking me to do something
And
that's outside of my comfort zone.
And they need to know the purpose of what's happening so that they can decide whether
they want to or not.
they're going to buy in or not.
Right. Because if it's like, oh, because I'm going to look foolish. Is your
Wow.
entire thing to just make me look foolish? And I'm like, no, it's not. So and part of it to me, which I don't mind, is I think that like it's about building trust.
Yeah.
And they have to trust that like, okay, so what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing it? And if they don't want to do it, that I'm not pressuring them to do it. Like,
How do you
letting them find it?
How do you go about building trust with people who are like really high status? I imagine you're working with people that are very important and they know that they're important. And as you said, they probably aren't super comfortable making themselves potentially look silly. How do you build that trust with those people?
I assume I already have it. So there's a couple things, right? So I assume that I already have it. And so I speak to people like, hey, like at a level of like, I'm already comfortable with you, to mirror and allow them to be comfortable with me.
Yeah.
If they're not comfortable with me, that's also okay. I don't push it. Right?
Sure.
And so just that balance of like, oh, I showed up comfortable. And then they're kind of still like really stiff. And so I'm like, okay. I don't call out the fact that they're not comfortable. Like,
Got it. You let them go at their own pace.
Right. And I just try to mirror comfort.
How would you recommend that a new leader coming into maybe a new organization or joining a new team, how would you recommend that they build trust with a team that maybe is already established and already knows each other?
Yeah. I think and I can answer it, but then the opposite is I think a lot of times new leaders come in and they try to prove something. And I would say don't try to prove anything.
Yeah.
Just try to notice what's already there. Right. And that comes also, I think, from improv, which is a big thing, right? That a lot of times when somebody's on stage and they're nervous or they're uncomfortable, they're trying to like fabricate something. They're trying to prove something. They're trying to create something, make something more interesting. And honestly, that's some of the worst that you can do.
Absolutely.
It's just notice what's already there. And so that's what I encourage new leaders to do is like, get to know who your team already is. Don't come in when so many leaders that want to come in and like put their stamp on stuff and like make it their own. And I'm like, what are you changing? Do you even understand what's here?
Yeah. And do you see the impact? You were telling me before we started recording about kind of doing a series of coachings with maybe one specific team. Do you notice a change as you kind of go back to that same group of people?
Yeah. Really? Yeah, absolutely. I think, and some of the things, there's small things that have a huge impact, right? Like just the idea of like, oh, listening more to the team.
Yeah.
Has a huge impact.
Which you'd think would be pretty self-explanatory, but I can imagine that if you're a leader who maybe has been part of the same organization for a long time and you maybe develop this idea that you kind of already know what's going on, I think it can probably be pretty easy to tune out voices that you might otherwise need to listen to.
Well, and also sometimes the voices that are the loudest are the ones who are in opposition. And those are the ones that a lot of times people don't want to hear. They're like, oh, they're just being difficult. They're, and it's like, but listen, right? What is it that they're actually saying?
Absolutely.
And I definitely, I've had some talks with some leaders and I'm like, it's actually a good thing if some of your people disagree with you.
Ooh, can you expand on that?
Yeah. I think that first, the thing is like, if you're in a space where everyone agrees with you, then probably not everyone's telling you the truth. So there's probably not a lot of trust there.
That's powerful.
So the fact that people are even willing to vocalize their disagreement, right? It doesn't mean they're right.
Yeah.
Right. But also to assume that you're the one who's always right just because you're the leader is a bit of a red flag.
Absolutely.
Right. And so noticing if people are saying something and it doesn't agree with you, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it means you've built that trust with your team that they trust that they can be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
It's huge.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always commend, leaders when somebody has something that's like, oh, I didn't like what they said. Yeah. But thank them for telling you.
Do you see a light bulb moment for people sometimes when you share that different perspective?
Oh, yeah. I think that a lot of times people are like, huh. And then there's some people who still are like, I don't know that I want to hear a difference of opinion. That doesn't feel good. And I'm like,
yeah,
if you think being a leader feels good all the time, then boy, oh boy.
Right. And that short-term feel good can often translate into long-term difficulty and long-term pain for an organization that's not being honest with each other.
Right. If like you were saying earlier, right, the truth before harmony. Because if everyone's just swallowing what they got going on, then like it's going to leak in other ways.
It will, or it will explode in one single confrontation or with an employee quitting unexpectedly when you totally could have seen it coming had there been an open dialogue.
Yep.
Has your business and the work that you're involved in taught you anything about yourself that you were surprised to learn?
I do think that, and I don't know, for people who are thinking about going into doing their own business, and being an entrepreneur, starting their own thing, I have learned so much more about myself than years of therapy. I mean, honestly, both in tandem are great.
Sure.
But just kind of
don't go to therapy, start a business.
Yes, that's what I'm trying
the
to
takeaway.
Say. Not at all. But I mean, there's a lot of moments when you're kind of like, for me at least, having a business where I've felt kind of like, oh wow, like this is like the most vulnerable I've ever felt.
Wow.
And in those moments, I've really kind of started to learn a little bit more about myself, and so.
Would you mind sharing maybe one of those moments that felt vulnerable at the time that made you kind of step back and go like, oh, wow, this is new?
Yeah, I would say so. The first time that I ever did like coaching, where it was like, this is one-on-one like leadership coaching.
Yeah.
And I was really excited about it, but there was this like fear that I felt that I was like, who am I to do this?
Like imposter syndrome almost?
For sure.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, like where is this coming from? Because, having the background that I've been in, I've done crisis like work and supported people through all kinds of things, like being a leader, having taught so many people. Right. And then, but just to be in like a one-on-one setting and like have that label of like, oh no, I'm teaching leadership coaching. The very first time I did it, I was, I definitely felt kind of like, oh no, like I heard that voice, like who am I? And so to do this. And so I really kind of had to like, be like, okay, like, fine, let's entertain this question. Who am I to do this? And so like
you sat with that question. And you dug, did you ever write anything out or was it really?
100%. Oh yeah. I journal as much as I can. That's a thing. And then just recently I'm also trying to like be more playful with the way that I like bring things up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
This
so
is internally, like as you're kind of talking to yourself, being
I
a
will
little more playful.
externally, like, yes. So I have brought these things up and then like start rapping it out loud.
I love that.
And I've had like these moments where I'm just kind of like, yeah, do a dumb little voice where I'm like my internal negative monologue and I'm just like talking all this shit about myself.
Feeling really bad. I'm
Yeah,
not
and,
feeling
like,
good.
But like yeah, but from my own perspective.
Got it.
Like,
Got it.
yeah, like who you think you are, you know, like very foolishness.
Absolutely. Like you were like putting yourself, as you had said, in that state of play, because that's where you're comfortable. You know how to go on stage and take an energy or a suggestion and turn it into something fun.
Yeah.
Why not use, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but why not take an emotion you're feeling and use it as a suggestion to have fun and play with it?
And in that way, like almost like I kind of playfully exaggerate it.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, it's a joke. Like there's a
Yes.
certain level of like,
Yes.
okay, my imposter syndrome is a joke. Like,
Absolutely.
that you feel like this after all of these years and after all of like the like
is hilarious.
is hilarious. And I'm just like laughing at myself like,
Yes.
wow.
As I was thinking, but before I sat down in this chair, how funny would it be if you were still nervous after 100 of these episodes? That would be insane. That would be so funny.
Yeah.
I would have to be the most nervous person in the world to do something 100 times and still get nervous about it. And just separating it 2 inches from, from the emotion I'm experiencing was enough to find that playful space and be like, this is fine. This is no big deal.
Because humor only comes from perspective.
Yes.
You can't be in it and laughing. You have to step just a little bit away to be like, okay, we're dumb.
That is huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. For people who maybe haven't stepped on stage before and have never done an improvised rap.
Fair. It's a big ask.
Do you have any thoughts or any suggestions for someone who would like to try that out when they're feeling maybe, I don't want to say a negative emotion, because as you said, there is no such thing as bad emotions or good emotions, but maybe an undesired or uncomfortable emotion. How would you suggest people maybe make a little bit of space between the emotion and their perspective?
Well, first, I think don't jump into that too quick, right? Like there has to be a little bit of feeling the emotion because like, do you understand it? Do you hear it? Do you know what it's about before you try to step away, right?
That's huge.
Because otherwise it's not gonna resolve anything. So just give yourself a moment and I would encourage people to be curious, right?
Yeah.
Like almost imagine like you're sitting with the feeling, like we're sitting here,
Yeah.
and you're just gonna interview it and be like, okay,
Ooh, I love that.
Okay, so tell me what's going on, right? Like, okay, you're feeling this kind of way. Great. What's going on? What else? What else can you tell me?
Yeah.
Okay. And like, but put a timer so that you're not like just getting sucked into this. You're like, 5 minutes, I think is enough to just kind of sit and just start this conversation.
And like, let's get to know like, oh, hello, nervousness.
Right.
Where did you come from?
And without like I hate you, right?
Yeah.
It's just a curiosity.
I have so many like self-help things floating around in my head, but I never know who to attribute them to. I never know where they come from. But one thing I heard at some point in my life was this idea of inviting your emotions in for tea. The idea of like, if you're about to be angry or you're feeling nervous, thinking of it like a knock on the door, and you open the door and there's nervousness and you just say, come on in, have a seat. I'd love, would you like something to drink? Let's hang out for a second. Make it a guest, or, rather than identifying with it and rather than feeling like, like you said, like there's no separation.
Yeah. Because I mean, think of the opposite is like if they knock at your door, right? And you're like, I don't want to see you. You have to close the door. And now you're like, are they going to come in through a window?
Right.
Are they going to show up another?
They're still knocking.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they stop, then you're still like on edge. Like, so exactly. So to save that kind of all of that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Invite them in. And again, if you don't try to solve the problem, and first of all, stop seeing them as a problem.
Yes.
It's just a message. They're just trying to get a message to you. And so when you stop seeing it as a negative or a problem, it makes it a lot easier to be curious.
What do you
Just
think?
allow them.
What do you think emotions are there to tell us about ourselves?
Emotions, I think, are there to tell us a lot of different things. There are many, many different messages that are in emotions. But generally, I think that emotions are trying to wake us up. There are certain things that are happening that we're not necessarily paying attention to. And that's what our emotions are there for. I mean, even, happiness is an emotion that's trying to tell you something, like notice this moment.
Yes.
And we also don't notice those messages.
I love that. I love that because there's also certain emotions. We've talked a lot about the uncomfortable emotions, but the pleasurable emotions are the ones that we tend to chase. We think of them as a destination. We think of happiness as a place to get to,
Right.
and as something that like, oh, I want to feel happy. But from the perspective that you're sharing, all happiness is a little tap on the shoulder to say, look around, look around and enjoy the fact that you're right where you want to be. And so if all you're doing is chasing that reminder to look around, you can do it right now.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It makes it less stressful.
Yeah.
When you realize, oh, okay. And then it also gives you back your control. Where I think we give a lot of control to our emotions.
Yes.
And we give a lot of control to the emotions of others.
Yes.
For how we feel.
I was, this last weekend, I went bowling with somebody who I won't name, but it was somebody who...
They know who they are.
They know who they are. Somebody who I love, by the way.
Yeah.
And every time they would... They love bowling. They go bowling a lot. And every time they would miss their mark or not hit a shot quite how they wanted to, I could tell they were getting really upset with themselves. And not just a regular frustration of, oh man, that didn't go my way, but really like a story of I'm not doing a good job and I should be doing better and what's wrong with me. And I was speaking to this person and we were just exploring that feeling because I was really curious watching them play. It didn't seem like they were having fun at all. Turns out they were, but that was just their reaction in those moments was a lot of negative emotions. And I had shared with them that exact idea of giving away your control. It's like when you attach your happiness or your satisfaction with an outcome that you can't control, you have given away your power to be happy to whatever the outcome is. If I bowl a strike, then I'm worthy of happiness. Right. And if I don't, then I'm not. And I was like, what if you just took 2 steps back and if you have to base your emotion on something, why not base it on the fact that you show up, like that you showed up to practice? And then it's like, you can control that. You can control whether you show up to practice. You can't control really whether you're going to get a strike or whether you're going to miss a couple of pins.
Right.
And I remember he thought about that and was like, oh, that's interesting. I never considered the control aspect or the idea that we're handing over our control. To me is a word that feels autonomy. Maybe it's like, yeah. I don't have autonomy over my whole emotional state because I've decided that external circumstances are going to dictate what I feel.
Yeah.
That's it, actually. I didn't have anything else to say.
No, but I think that's you hit on something there too, like just the idea of like, oh, once this happens, then I'm worthy, right? And I think that's such a. I feel collectively like we're all going through this huge unlearning. That like our value is not tied to our productivity, and that's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Really hard one.
It was hard for me when I was an employee. Now that I don't currently have a job and my entire focus has been on my own personal project, this podcast and doing other stuff, I feel it 10 times more. And I don't even have a boss. And so now it's like, that's all I have to measure myself on is how much did I get done today? Did you struggle with that? Or do you still struggle with that being a business owner?
Yeah, I have. And I think, in the past definitely struggled with like, oh my gosh, I have to like, as if somebody was watching and I have to prove all the things that I'm doing. And, And that's not what's happening, but that's just how it feels, you know?
Totally.
I think what I'm really trying to do more of, and I've been doing this for a while, is to measure myself by consistency. Because again, it comes back to like, what can I control versus what I can't control?
Yeah.
And sometimes what we put, on the list of like productivity has a lot to do with how other people react to what we're doing, how it's
Totally.
received, how like, right, that I did this thing, but then it has to jump through all these hoops. And so
Certainly.
I'm really trying to measure it by like, okay, like all the ways that I consistently show up, and that I'm consistent, and that I have intention in the things that I'm trying to do. And sometimes my intention means I got to take a nap, and that's important because it feeds into the bigger picture of what it is I'm trying to do, and the way that I want to do it. Because it's not just what, but it's the how that's really important to me.
How has your time management evolved as a business owner? Did you ever struggle with time management or using time effectively?
Yes, I think that the biggest thing for me has been recognizing what are and are not my strengths, especially in the beginning when there's something that's exciting and new. That's just like my brain loves to chase that dopamine. I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn a new thing, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But then after a while, I'm like, oh, I got to do this every week. Like, what do you mean? What, taxes are due all the time? Like, this is awful. And so just knowing and being okay with like, okay, where do I need the support? Where do I have the team to support me? And sometimes it's a team, and sometimes it's like colleagues, where we can at least like get together and have like, I have, some friends where we get together and we do once a week the hardest part of the thing we don't want to do.
Oh, I love that.
As a co-working.
That is a life hack right there. Is find the people in your life where you can say, hey guys, if you've got something really difficult to do, let's all do it on Tuesday morning. Let's all get together and just sit down with our laptops and do the thing we absolutely don't want to do.
And then we tell each other, this is the thing that I'm scared of doing. And then we're like, we like pump each other up, like,
oh, that's so
go
cool.
do the thing. And I'm like, sending the scary email. Yeah, do it.
I wanted to ask, how did your TEDx talk come about? How did that happen? Because that's, I think, for a lot of speakers and a lot of people who do what you do, I imagine that's a huge goal that a lot of people have, is to be on that stage.
Yeah. So I guess I didn't realize that every TEDx has a call for speakers, which is so silly to admit that I didn't know. But they do. And so when I saw the theme of that, what they were doing, their conference was reimagine. And I was like, okay, literally anything that I would talk about is in the vein of reimagining. Like everything is imagination. And I'm like, that's my whole vibe.
Totally.
And so I was like, okay, that's it. This is like, I must submit. And so, I put together this little pitch of what I wanted to talk about. And what I really love about the process, at least in the one that I was a part of in TEDx here in Folsom, is that I had the time to kind of let it develop, because what I thought I was going to say in the very beginning when I submitted is close to what I said, but it's still like
it evolved a little bit.
It evolved. And I love that there was a space for that to happen. So that was it. I just saw
that's so cool.
The title.
And did you send in like a tape? Or
I had to self-record. It was a 2-minute. They're like, in 2 minutes or less, explain kind of your idea. Obviously the TED talk is 18 minutes or something. And so they're like, don't give us your whole talk. Just 2 minutes, kind of, just pitch it. Like, why is this an interesting idea? An idea worth sharing really is like, right, the TED ethos.
What was the moment like for you when you made a decision to leave your job and start your own business? What were you feeling during that time, and what kind of led to that decision?
I had been in a string of different jobs at that point, and there was kind of always this, it was ending in a very similar way. And so I was also engaged at the time, married now, but back then, right, my fiance at the time was like, are you noticing the pattern? And I really appreciate him because he notices things that I'm so in it. I don't, speaking of perspective, right?
My
Like,
partner's the exact same way.
and
It's
I'm like,
so helpful.
it's super helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I also am willing to like to listen.
Yeah.
And what he was noticing was like, yeah, it's this theme where you show up, you're super excited. They tell you like they're ready to like change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to do it in like, and it was all very different sectors.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the hook for me, was like, hey, we're ready to change the world. And I'm like, yes, let me in on this.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And were you doing similar work with all these organizations?
no.
Oh, got it. But
That's
you would
what's
see
so-
something that you were excited about and you
Yes.
really believed in the mission.
Yeah.
And then what would happen once you got
Right.
into
And
those
so
positions?
I would jump in and, I mean, I was basically like program managing or directing or like project managing.
Yeah.
Or like, but no, because I was also doing like external, like education, community engagement. So it was really kind of all different things. But,
Sure.
but again, it was like, oh, I'm going to make a difference in like the world. We're really going to like
Yeah.
shake it up. So
Of
that
course.
was what I believed in. But then the pattern was, then they would be like, hey, whoa, your ideas are like, thank you.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah,
Or
we're going to
like,
keep doing things how we've done them for the last 50 years.
we're going to keep doing what we've done. And like, but we love your enthusiasm. We want your enthusiasm.
So don't lose that.
but we, yeah, but only on what we're already
Ditch
doing.
the ideas and kind of use that enthusiasm for what's not working.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, why is this happening? And then immediately just being like, I don't care about this anymore.
Right.
And so,
yeah.
so he was like, yeah, that's happening. It just keeps happening. And like the time span was getting shorter and shorter.
Got it.
And so like, I think at the last place I was there less than 3 months before it happened. Wow. And he was like, okay, it's going to be like, you're going to accept the job and then the same day leave. Like you have to,
Sure.
this isn't working.
Yeah.
So, you know, very lovingly, he said, you got to do different. He's like, why don't you do your own thing? Like, you really want to change the world. Like, why are you letting people get in your way?
Oh, that's so, to have a partner that would not only be okay with you taking a risk like that, but would encourage you to take that risk.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Oh, it was huge. And
That's
so,
huge.
and I didn't realize that I had been waiting for someone. And that's a thing that I also have learned in my business is that I sometimes I kind of patiently wait for permission.
Yeah.
And I'm learning like, that's okay. If my intention is to really change the world, I cannot wait for permission. People are not going to give it to me.
No.
And so
most people don't think that it's possible or that you're capable because they don't know what's up here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful. Yeah. So he said, do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like the permission that I needed
Yeah.
to jump
Wow.
into that. And so,
That's incredible.
yeah.
And what did it feel like when you took that leap and gave yourself permission?
I mean, it was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also, if I'm really honest, like I was so, I guarded it so much, which and we were talking earlier before we started recording. So I really resonate with what you were saying. Cause I just kind of felt like, oh, it's not what I want it to be yet. I don't want to show the world until it's where I want it to be.
Yes.
And
Totally.
And it was really scary. And like, I was there for a long time where I kind of was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to talk to people about it. I don't want to like,
you were in
be
like
out
the
there.
planning stage for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I was past it, I was past the planning,
Got it.
but I wanted to, I was like, don't look here yet. If that makes any
What
sense.
what was the fear? Cause I'm right there with you. I identify with that.
I
super
think
hard.
for me, it was like, I had this expectation and I don't know. I just wanted it to be,
Yeah.
I didn't really know what it was. It felt too messy to show the world.
I get that. You were doing something that there was no roadmap for.
None.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to find somebody else doing what I was doing. I was like, who's doing this so I can try to do that? And I found nobody. I'd find certain things and I'd try to imitate them for a second. And it just was like painful.
I bet. Yeah.
It was so painfully bad. And like, I can look back and laugh at like, oh my gosh, what a waste of like energy and resources to try to pretend to be something that I'm not. And I think like it did. It really took some time to be like, the only way that this works is if you fully be you and lean into that.
Yeah. I can tell you what it is for me, which is I have such high standards and I know what good looks like and I know what it takes to be good. And then I record, even when I took the leap to record episode 1, I then go back and watch and I go, oh, that's not what good looks like. It was my best. And I think what my work is to reframe, to just go, okay, you don't need to be here.
Right.
You just need to be better than, compete against yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
Ira Glass, who's like, famous podcaster, has this amazing quote. I'm not going to get it right because it's very lengthy, real Ira Glass stuff. But he basically is talking about how, like, as an artist, one of the hardest things is starting out, because you know exactly what it takes to be a good artist, and you know what good art is.
Yes.
So when you start doing things, you're like, this is shit.
Absolutely.
And it feels so bad because the gap between who you want to be and how you want to be seen
100%.
is not how you are yet showing up. But
even if I know that it's possible, even if I know I have the raw materials of talent, that if I put in the work and I do it over and over and over again, I know that I'll eventually get there. It's almost embarrassing to be like, this is the best I can do right now.
Yes. And that's how I felt. I think, like, that was it. It was like, I was embarrassed that I was like, I just started a business and my baby is like, like, I just felt like, I'm like, oh, she don't even got shoes on and, like, don't look at her. And it was,
absolutely.
Definitely that.
What was the first moment of validation for you, either from yourself or from externally, that made you go, oh, this is valuable and this is worth sharing, and it's not something to be embarrassed about?
I don't think I can pinpoint an exact moment, but it was kind of a collection of moments. And then I remember feeling like, oh, what I just said, I could see it changed people's faces, and I could see, like, literal light bulbs and, like, lights going on in their eyes. And I was just like,
stuff that was probably obvious to you as you said it.
Yes. But it wasn't to the room.
Right.
And then, like, later thinking about all of those little light bulbs that went on, and then thinking about, oh, damn, like, the impact that those people are going to have, like, with their teams, like, in their relationships.
Yeah.
And it just was like, oh, this is important.
Where are you at now with your business? Do you allow yourself to just sit back and go, yep, this is, like, I'm satisfied, I'm on the trajectory I want to be on, or is there still in your mind a gap to close between where you're at and where you want to be?
I mean, I'm very happy with where I am as far as, like, the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm getting to do. But really my next thing, and I've had this idea that I want to make happen. And so it's already, actually, I'm saying it like it's not already real, because it's actually real. It exists.
It's already done.
Remember, but it's a thing, and I really want to give a space for leaders to show up and to play and to learn and to, like, stretch all of the leadership muscles that they need to lead, all of the relationship, emotional intelligence, right? The improv-based thinking. Like, that's really what I want to do next. And
When you say a space, do you mean like a physical space?
Actually, no, I think it's going to be a digital space.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And are you able to share any details of what that might look like?
Yeah. So it's actually, it's a community that's online that's called the Leadership Playground. And so it's for leaders to come and to, and almost kind of like a little gym for leaders.
Got it. And this is maybe like a regular time where people can show up and focus on the areas of opportunity that they see in themselves, or anything that they feel like maybe they're struggling with.
Yep.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of leaders,
yes,
and emotionally intelligent leaders, are you up for an improv exercise?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can cut it if it's bad. I would love to role play with you where I'm the employee,
okay,
and you're a leader, and the first round you react the way maybe your average manager would react, and then we do a take 2 where you react as an emotionally intelligent leader.
Okay.
Are you down for that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So First scenario that comes to my mind would be, let's start simple.
Okay.
I want some PTO, but it's a really busy time for the team, and maybe we're tight on staff. So, hey, Betsaida.
Hey, Christian, what's up?
Hey, I just wanted to ask. I'm sorry, I should have put this in earlier, but my girlfriend's birthday is coming up in about 3 weeks, and we were hoping to go down to Disneyland, just for like 3 or 4 days. Is there any way I could squeeze some PTO on the calendar?
You didn't go through the process, the official process?
Well, I did, but it got denied, and I wasn't sure why that happened.
Because we just need everybody to be here. So,
Okay, is there anything I can do to maybe switch with somebody, or?
I mean, we just need everybody. So I don't know who you can switch with because everybody needs to be here.
Got it.
So, I mean, talk to your girlfriend about maybe you guys can come up with a different plan, but we really need you here.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
That was good.
That's how people act.
Why have I been in that scenario countless
That's how it
times?
goes. That's what I'm trying to channel. Like,
Yes.
yeah, the typical.
Okay. Now let's try it with some same scenario,
Same scenario.
but with some emotional intelligence.
All right.
Okay. Hey, Betsaida.
Hey, Christian, what's up?
Question for you, and I
Okay.
know this is, maybe it might not be possible, but my girlfriend's birthday is actually coming up in a couple weeks, and I forgot to go through the process to request PTO. I know it fills up pretty far in advance. Is there any way I might be able to get just like a couple days off, maybe at the end of October, for a little vacation?
Wow. Yeah. You know what? I know October is our busy time.
Yeah,
And so
I
it's
know.
going to be really hard to figure out like how we can make that work. But I know like clearly it's important to you. That's why you came to ask me.
It
and
is.
figuring that out. Yeah. I mean, what do you think would make sense? Do you have a thought of like how we can make sure that everything's covered? Because that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we.
100. Actually, I was thinking about it because I know it's our busy time. I have 4 specific projects that are going to be on my plate for like those couple weeks. My thought was I already know that I can work ahead and get 99% of what I need to get done before the 3 days that I was hoping to have off. And then I figured I could talk to my coworker, Jared, and he actually already agreed to cover me for the 2 meetings that I have scheduled
With our clients.
with our clients
Great.
for that Friday.
Okay.
In my mind, I mean, knowing my workload and knowing his workload, I really don't think that we would skip a beat with me being gone for those 3 days. But also, I'm super flexible if I need to jump on, while I'm down there to be on a quick call. I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the fact that you're like understanding the situation that I'm in, just
Yeah.
because I just want to make sure that everything's moving forward. These are really big clients.
Yes.
So, I mean, as long as you're willing to be on call if we need you, and obviously, hopefully we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that we can definitely make that work. So why don't we make a time to like go through and figure out and make sure that everyone is in agreement of kind of how things are going to be moved around
Perfect.
to cover you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Absolutely.
That was awesome. And I think you hit some really important points in that second round, because I think a lot of people, if they're not familiar with what emotional intelligence is, may jump to the conclusion that it's the boss being a pushover,
Right.
or just letting the office be a free-for-all, and, oh, well, I guess we'll just miss deadlines, and I guess, no one's going to respect me. You did the exact opposite. You made it clear that your priority as a leader was that our clients are taken care of and the work gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if there's ever a scenario where there's a question about PTO or whatever, like if the clients are taken care of and the work is getting done, is there a valid reason to say no? Probably not.
Probably not.
And maybe there's a little bit of ego at play with the first manager who is insistent on, maintaining control and saying no, even though there's maybe something that could be done. And I don't know. I was having fun with the character because I know if I was working in that environment, I'm 10 times more likely to be willing to be on call, or to, answer my phone while I'm on vacation, or even jump on a a 20-minute meeting, if needed,
Yeah.
because I feel supported
Yeah.
as an employee. I feel like my boss cares about me. I'm going to care way more about them and about the business.
Yeah.
What thoughts did you have?
No,
around
absolutely.
that?
I think the same thing is like, I think people think that, oh, if I'm emotionally intelligent, then I have to just give in. Right.
Yes.
But there could have been a moment where like, it would still be a no, but I still heard what they were coming from.
I felt
and
super listened to.
and explained, but here's like my priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if my priority is being met and like you said, right, the clients are being taken care of, then like I'm not just going to say no because of my ego.
Right.
Right. And so I think that that's an important piece of it. Is it?
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. Being a leader is all about boundaries and healthy boundaries. So it's not
huge.
one way or the other. It's not like I only get what I want because I'm the leader, or I have to give everything that you want so that you're happy, because like neither of those are healthy. Healthy is in the middle. Whereas like, how are we taking care of, as much as we can, both sides of the equation?
Yeah. I think we think about boundaries a lot as it relates to romantic relationships. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about healthy boundaries as it relates to working relationships and professional relationships. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what do you see? What creates healthy boundaries within a workplace? And could you maybe provide a couple examples of what those healthy boundaries might look like?
Yeah. Healthy boundaries at work look like being responsible for your own emotions and not making yourself responsible for the emotions of others.
Got it.
And even as a leader, right, that people think like, oh, well, I can't talk to, and like, right, one of the reasons they're like, I don't want to talk to them, like, because it might make them mad, or it might make them sad, or it might make them feel some kind of way. And it's like, that again is not your responsibility, right? Your responsibility is to make sure that everybody has what they need. So
so I'm going to be a little selfish and ask a question on behalf of somebody that I know who works in an environment where they don't always feel super comfortable coming to their boss. Because of that, they're not sure what the emotional reaction is going to be. What advice do you have for somebody who's in that position where it's like, maybe I have a question, or maybe I want to approach my supervisor, but they have a history of unloading on me, or they have a history of reacting in an emotional way?
Yeah. Well, and that's a different situation because there's a power dynamic at play, right? So now if I'm speaking to someone who has power over me, it's a very different thing.
Got it.
Than if I'm speaking to someone who's like we're equals, or if I'm someone who's creating the space and I'm the manager, right?
Absolutely.
There's a difference. And so if you are someone who's speaking to someone who has power over you and you're like, I'm not really sure how they're going to react to this, I would say first and foremost, your safety is of the utmost importance. And I don't mean physical safety, I mean emotional safety.
Huge.
So if the feeling is that they're probably going to dump on me, and that's not something that you're like ready to handle, then find the easiest way for you to give the information. If you must give it, first of all, figure out do you have to give this information? Does it have to come from you? Maybe there's someone else who's better equipped to have this conversation. But if it is you, and it has to be, think of the way in which you can give it that gives you the most little bit of like autonomy and control and distance. So maybe that's putting it together in an email, being a little more thoughtful in how you communicate it. Maybe it's sharing it in front of them and someone else that feels a little more safe, it's thinking through like, how can I give this information if I must, in a way that makes me still feel safe. And the other part is then also taking care of yourself, right? So what do you have to do? Think about what you're going to do before, not just during, and then what you're going to do after. We focus so much on like, what am I going to do during? How will I say this? But like, what will you do before so that you go in there with the best energy that you can? Because if you're just thinking about how much this is going to suck, you're going to bring that into this and probably not make it better for yourself.
Right. So you're saying give yourself maybe a couple moments before the interaction happens to just envision how it may go, and to kind of put yourself into a mindset of, here's how I want to approach it.
Yeah, how I want to approach it, but also without even worrying about what it's going to be, just let yourself be in the best mindset that you can be, so that you can go in there and be like, hey, this is the thing I have to share with you.
Yeah.
And then they can have like whatever reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, like when you watch, I always call it the Homer Simpson effect. Then what I'm teaching is that like, Homer's always going to Homer.
Yes.
Right. And so like, I'm not Marge. I'm not married to that man.
Mm-hmm.
So I can watch it and just be amused by like, what a character. Right. And so that's the energy that I want to maintain.
Absolutely.
And I don't have to laugh out loud or be like dismissive of their feelings.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, they're just being who they are.
Absolutely.
That has nothing to do with me.
I love the idea of being an interested observer.
Mm-hmm.
Just to and it's easier said than done, I think.
100%.
But to go, I know, you may even know for sure the interaction I'm about to have is gonna elicit an emotional response from this person, whether that be frustration or anger or whatever.
Right.
Happiness, I know they're gonna be happy, whatever. But trying to, create that little bit of distance and separation to say, let me just be curious. You brought up curiosity early in the conversation,
Right.
and go, oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
I can tell they're upset at me. How interesting.
Right.
How interesting, especially because I'm doing the best that I can.
Right.
And I have nothing to be upset at myself about. I did,
Right.
I
brought this information versus
and I
like
brought this
hiding it
information.
or right.
Yeah,
So it's like
exactly.
it's very interesting. It's all data is what it is. That's all it is. It's data.
And I think that could be expanded to life.
Mm-hmm.
It's all data.
It's just data.
Which can be really uncomfortable, especially if we have scenarios in life that are very impactful or really heavy or feel negative, or feel elated and extremely positive. But it's all just data. It's all information. And I think that the best thing that we can do is find that space within ourselves where we can just be curious observers of what's happening and use the data. Yeah. The data is just an input. It doesn't have to dictate the output.
Yeah. And that's the thing about emotions, right? They're just data. They're not directives.
That's huge too. Wow, we got some bombshells.
Yeah. And that's why I say
emotions are just data. They're not directives. Meaning they don't have to dictate the way you respond to them.
Right. Or because I feel this way, I must then behave the certain way.
Absolutely.
No, it's just data. But then that's why it's also important that you have a after plan for the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you just got flooded by all of this emotional data. Yeah. What's your plan? So that you don't just have to like after that be like, and then I go right into this sales meeting. That's probably a bad idea, right? Or I go straight home and have dinner with my family. That's probably also not the best idea. Like have a time, have a plan. What are you going to do for yourself? And it can be quick, but just think about it.
Sure. Maybe like I know I'm going to go into this stressful situation. In advance, I'm going to plan to go on a walk afterwards. Mm-hmm. Or in advance, I'm going to take some time to go cry in my car.
Hopefully not. But if you need to, that's fine. But But like have a plan so that you like, okay, after that, you have a minute or a couple minutes for yourself.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
I love that.
A side note, not really related, but kind of, I automatically schedule a 10-minute decompress after any meeting. That's not
so smart.
That's because obviously, like if I'm just working and doing things, that's different. But if I'm speaking to a person or people's group, I have 10 minutes where I'm just like, let myself kind of go like, whew, that was a lot. Because people, they're all little like, everybody brings their different emotions and energy and about everything. And so I'm just like, I just need that moment to be like, okay.
Yes. To feel it, process it, let it go, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
That's huge. Any last words before we wrap up? Last words of encouragement or any thoughts inspired by this conversation, or even any advice to somebody who wants to bring it back and focus on what this podcast is about. Any advice to people who want to find their path in life and maybe are in a job that feels really safe, but they're not happy on taking that next step or getting closer to their authentic self? Sorry, I know I threw a lot at you.
That's a lot. Yeah. No, but it's good.
Take it any direction you want.
I was going to say, for whatever reason, it stood out to me as like, safe isn't bad. I also think that there's kind of, we as a culture have really kind of vilified the safe route.
Yeah.
Which I also just think is like, doesn't have to be true.
Yeah.
I think that even whatever the position that you're in, whatever the job that you're in, I would just encourage people to notice what lights them up.
Yeah. I love that. Notice what lights you up.
Yeah. And then find ways to do more of that.
So simple. And that doesn't put any pressure on you to go start a business.
You don't have to.
You don't have to make it your entire identity or your whole life. Notice what lights you up and do more of that.
And
beautiful.
Actively find the ways to do more of that.
And I think that's a critical step as well. Yeah. Actively seek out or find the ways to do more of the stuff that lights you up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Betsaida, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I feel like doing this show is just me getting free therapy from all of my guests. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.